Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindie Nation. I'm Jeff, and today on episode 199, we're checking out the best new indie games coming to the Nintendo Switch eShop this week.
While I'm panicking about finishing up episode 200 in time.
You like finding new indie games or just hate browsing the eShop? Like this video, subscribe for more, and then head down to the comments or over on Discord and let us know your picks, as well as if we missed anything. These are the 10 new notable Nindies hitting the Nintendo Switch through Sunday, December 10th. We kick things off on Tuesday, December 5th with a console port that I wasn't expecting much from, but the team at Easy Day Studios is making some pretty confident claims about Skater XL, so let's talk about it. After Tony Hawk set the standard for arcade-style skateboarding games, a few years later, EA released Skate, which tried to be a bit more simulation-focused, and then Skater XL took that idea and went all in. Reviews will show that most people can't grasp the idea that each stick controls a foot on the skateboard, but if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that those who do get it absolutely think this is the best way to play. Definitely isn't something for everyone, but if you've been itching for a new skating game and are willing to put the time in to learn it, Skater XL releases with buttery smooth 60 frames per second performance for $39.99. Inkle is a studio known for telling cool stories in interesting ways, as they did with 80 Days and Heaven's Vault, but I think this week's release is the one that just might win me over. A Highland Song is a 2.5D platforming adventure, where the story is told as you run across the Scottish wilderness. After living with her mom for 15 years, Moira McKinnon is thinking about running away. When she receives a letter from her uncle telling her to meet him at a lighthouse far away, she uses that excuse to set out across the Highlands to find the mysterious reward waiting for her. Something about this game is just grabbing me. I don't know. I like the vibes. The platforming kind of reminds me of Grease, but with much more variety. And, I mean, who can't relate to being a teenager who wants to run away? I think that's just kind of part and parcel of being a teenager. I'm really digging this one, and I look forward to seeing how it reviews when it releases for $17.99. And as mentioned at the end of last week's episode, the game I am by far most looking forward to this week is Born of Bread. Just look at this! Doesn't this look like fun? I love the art style, though I'm immediately concerned it might not run well on the Switch. But the 4 French Canadians at Wild Arts seem to have a ton of passion behind this Super Paper Mario-inspired RPG. There's a ton of humor and constant jabs at the tropes we all see in RPGs, and just like Super Paper Mario, while the game does revolve around turn-based RPG combat, it's full of little adventure game and minigame aspects that keep things constantly moving and interesting. It's published by Dear Villagers, who is usually pretty good about supporting their games, like Revita, Neurovoider, and Hover, but also have a couple blemishes on their record of only publishing games that are fully baked, like Soldiers and Edge of Eternity, so I do recommend waiting for reviews. Otherwise, I hope to check this one out and think it could be a great option for people who might want more after just playing through Super Mario RPG. And it releases for $29.99. Crispy Creative is a new indie studio based out of Los Angeles, and their first release this week lets me say a sentence I don't think has ever been spoken on Nindie Nation. A Long Journey to an Uncertain End is a space opera where you play as a sentient spaceship helping its crew seek freedom from persecution through gameplay that mixes a choice-driven visual novel with resource and time management.
See what I mean?
It's only got a few reviews so far for PC, but they are all positive and appreciate both the game and developers' focus on inclusivity among its cast of characters. If this sounds like a long journey to an uncertain end that you'd like to go on, you can do so when it releases for $24.99. Then rounding out an especially beefy Tuesday release list is While the Iron's Hot, which is the latest title published by Humble Games, this time for $19.99. Developed by Brooklyn-based Bontemps Games, this is an adventure with a bunch of pieces that you're familiar with, but all wrapped into something unique. You play as a blacksmith who is trying to rebuild his town after some kind of disaster, and the gameplay includes everything from 2D platforming and puzzle solving to all kinds of blacksmithy minigames, resource management, and town building. The gameplay loop basically goes like this. You get some story, then you go scavenging for resources, then smith them into whatever you need so that you can build the next part of your town. So if you dig the approach, you're not likely to get bored anytime soon. The pixel art looks nice and clean, the soundtrack is pleasant, and when so many aspects of gameplay are all combined into one, games like this are what I most like to refer to as indie games that are indie as
Whoa!
And now we skip over to the big Thursday drop on December 7th, and we start with a game that, if you like cool stories, specifically those with a sci-fi flair that tug on your heartstrings, as long as the performance pans out, you should totally consider picking up Outer Wilds when it drops for $19.99. This game and Mobius Digital have won a ton of awards, including BAFTA's Indie Game of the Year in 2020, which basically means all of the other indie game developers thought it was the coolest, most interesting game that year, made even more impressive by the fact that it released right around the same time as Hades. The game revolves around a time loop that resets, I think, every 30 minutes, but correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And you're trying to figure out how to get this small solar system out of this destructive time loop. I guess you could say it's somewhere between an adventure game and a puzzle game, but I usually don't gravitate to those on genre alone, and I thought this game was freaking awesome. If you liked the way Zelda Majora's Mask balanced story and puzzles across shorter-term loops and a larger meta-story, then this game will be right up your alley. I don't want to explain too much because while most players will have entirely different experiences, everyone does see the same main story beats which anchor the narrative, and that's really the best part. Well, for me, I loved seeing how crazy some of the planets looked, which reminded me of Interstellar, but that's just icing on the cake. The whole adventure is pretty long too, with average playthroughs lasting around 16 hours, with about another 10 hours on top if you want to see everything there is to offer. Of course, there's no shortage of reviews and gameplay videos if you happen to be on the fence, and since Annapurna discounts their games frequently, you could always wait for a sale, but Outer Wilds is one of those rare indie games that, if you're watching Nindie Nation, this is a game you should at the very least put on your wishlist, because I think just about everyone will find something to love in Outer Wilds. Then we've got a visual novel that, if you're a fan of them, you might already be familiar with, but I have never heard of. Pester Quest is an episodic series, 14 volumes to be exact, created by author Andrew Hussey and developer What Pumpkin Games. For the discounted price of $8.99, Fellow Traveler gives you all 14 episodes, but with the exception of a focus on making friends, I can't tell you what the hell this game is about because everything in the description just references the Homestuck webcomic series, and it doesn't give any more information to people who might not be familiar with that.
Like me.
They do say that Pester Quest is a
whimsical episodic visual novel adventure set in the darkly funny Homestruck/Hiveswap universe.
But other than that, I got nothing. Tell me down in the comments if you're familiar with any of these references. A couple quickies to wrap up the big Thursday drop, starting with Nessie The Robot, published by Nami Tentu for $9.99. So, you see this? It's an 8-bit platformer adventure. It's clear the developer, DTG Games, was mostly inspired by Super Mario Bros. 2, with combat that's somewhere between Mega Man and Rygar, as your little robot dude primarily shoots short-range projectiles. I think it looks like a pretty decent time, and at a slightly lower price, could definitely see myself giving it a shot. And then, bear with me here, One of the biggest console flops in recent history was the Xbox 360's performance in Japan. It wasn't for a lack of trying though, and hardcore shoot-'em-up fans will agree that some of the best titles in the genre released exclusively for that console, exclusively in Japan. They've slowly been making their way to the Switch, and this week, Triangle Service brings another one of their highly acclaimed Xbox 360 titles to the Switch. It's called, Z-Zeal? The description asks,
Do you have Z-Zeal?
And I honestly don't know if that sounds like a medication or an STD. Either way, I don't have Z-Zeal, but if you want to, you can get it for $15. Just, talk to your doctor first. Finally, as usual, we wrap up the week with the latest release by Ratalaika Games. And you know what? Pheromonium looks pretty cool. Coming in at a higher than usual $12.99, one of Ratalaika's better developing partners, Red Black Spade, seems to ask the question,
what if Cuphead was a Metroidvania set inside the mind of a teenage boy with a slew of phobias?
It's a big game too, with over 15 hours of gameplay, and it combines some fantasy with a bit of spookiness and brings all kinds of weird to the table as you explore the boy's phobias as some kind of hammer-wielding badass girl. It definitely seems a cut above their regular fare, and something blah blah blah, I forgot to write a transition to the outro. I gotta say y'all, you showed up last week. I loved seeing all the appreciation in the comments section for especially citizens Troy, Flower, and Nugget. It's just nice to see some positivity in the YouTube comments for once, Oddly enough, in an episode about cats, the winner of the random game code from last week is none other than commenter Meow Food Now with their shout out to Troidal Power. Hit me up on Twitter or Discord and we'll sort out the game you won. Born of Bread is definitely my pick for the week, but if you haven't played Outer Wilds and can tolerate its lower resolution, you should strongly consider it. Otherwise, a Highland Song seems to bring the vibes I'm looking for, and Pheromonium looks like a good time. But, gang, I am loving Wallworld from last week's episode, and I think that'll be keeping my Joy-Con synced for quite a while. But what about you? Let me know down in the comments or over on Discord if anything this week is going on your wish list. I'm not entirely sure what we'll be doing next week, as the new releases are really starting to slow down, but Hammerwatch Anniversary looks like a solid take on the long-running series, and Hellwell could be good for some crunchy arcade score chasing, but I'm working on a big episode 200 video, so I might just stay focused on that. But I guess you'll have to find out next week, citizens, because we're all done for today. Thanks so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing Nindie Nation with others. Until next week, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 199. And remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.